We are Rogue Media Sports.
Rack your look for spring at Nordstrom Rack and save up to 60% on brands you love. Rag & Bone, Vince, Marc Jacobs, Adidas, Joe's, and more. Great brands, great prices every day at Nordstrom Rack. Score new dresses, denim, sandals, designer bags, and sunglasses, plus updates for the family and home. Get your spring on for less, up to 60% less, today at your Nordstrom Rack store. What will you find?
At Amica Insurance, we know it's more than a life policy. It's about the promise and the responsibility that comes with being a new parent. Being there day and night, and building a plan for tomorrow, today. For the ones you'll always look out for, trust Amica Life Insurance. Amica. Empathy is our best policy.
It is the Doomsday podcast, and we're only about an hour after this Cowboys 1916 loss in Houston. It is truly Doomsday for the Cowboys, and a game that they hung around, and really seemed to be in position to win. They find a way to lose that game late, and Ed Werder joining me from our Colorado studio. And Ed, this was a this is a rough one. This is one that you just wonder if this team they desperately needed to come out of this stretch at 3-2. And speaking of stretch, by the way, we'll have Glenn Stretch Smith later in the program giving out his grades. But Ed, this comes down to, there were some unbelievable goal line stands by the Cowboys. There were some plays made. I've never heard Chris Collinsworth ooh and ah about a game like this. I mean, it was like, honestly, he'd never seen anything like some of the hits that we saw in that game. And it was there were a lot of crushing hits, a lot of excitement. But Ed, it comes down to about 5.5 minutes left in this thing. It's in overtime, and the Cowboys are sitting there 4th and 1 at the Texans' 41-yard line, and Jason Garrett decides to punt. What were your thoughts at the very moment, and then now the way it's played out? Where are you?
Well, I think two things. Last week the Texans were involved in an overtime game against the Colts, and the Colts head coach Frank Wright went for it deeper in his own territory and had greater distance to get the first down. I think it was 4th and 6. But it was also in overtime. He didn't get it, and the Texans won that game in overtime. And then this week, the Cowboys head coach, Jason Garrett, has an opportunity on 4th and less than 2, probably 1.5 yards. They built their entire team around Ezekiel Elliott, who leads the league in rushing, and around an offensive line that's among the best in football. And even on a night where, Ezekiel Elliott struggled for every yard he gained, he was still averaging 2.7 yards per rush, and Garrett elects, I think, to basically play not to lose and play to the strength of his team, which was the defense, and he decided to punt, and the Texans took that possession, turned it around, and then won the game. So I think Jason Garrett's a guy who's going to come under a great deal of scrutiny by a Cowboys fan base with which he lost popularity and support long ago. And I think it's going to be a difficult week for him. And I think he's going to really be challenged from this point forward to have the kind of support that he would like to have. And I think it's not just this one decision and it's not just this one game, but how about this fact? Jason Garrett's team is 0-3 on the road this year. They've scored 8, 13, and 16 points. That's 37 points in 13 quarters.
Goodness gracious. That is remarkable, and I mean, you're right. We wonder sometimes, hey, do offensive lines travel? Can you do? There they are against the Texans team that was 1-3, desperate for a win, and it's those moments. Teams are sort of, we don't know if winning this game would have defined Garrett or would have defined this season, but there are those moments where you kind of put your faith in your team, you load up. It's like you said with Zeke, and when all is said and done, and if Garrett doesn't make it this season, and I think we all agree if they don't make the playoffs, he's probably done here. I think you can point back to a moment where his gut told him to do something more conservative. And my thing on this, Ed, I hear your point about, okay, yeah, play to the strength of your defense. But, we've seen more ties this year in overtimes. It just, to me, it looked like such a meek type situation. It wasn't like Reich. They weren't on their own side of the 50, and they were on the 41-yard line. The defense had been belling them out all night, and the truth is, there they are. Everything sort of hanging in the balance, and 5.5 minutes left. So you're going to basically have to go 3 and out with Houston, which that hadn't been happening a lot. You're going to have to 3 and out them to get the ball back and have a chance to do something. So it just, in the way the overtime rules are now, to me, they were trying to set up these rules to get coaches to be more aggressive. And in some ways, that's happening in the NFL. With Jason, it didn't tonight, and we see what's happened with the Cowboys. And we also saw, Ed, what happens when you have a great wide receiver. And DeAndre Hopkins doesn't get enough attention in this league, but when the game was on the line, and he played great all night, but he made an unbelievable play. Okay, we got a ton to get to, and Frito, I'd like to ask you at this moment to please go ahead and play the music. And it is that Doomsday podcast, and Ed Warder, so many different directions to go in this one. I think, and we'll get to hear from Glenn Stretch Smith here in a little bit, and he'll give his grades on all facets of this team. But let's begin. Let's stay on offense. We obviously are going to say some things about this defense, and they had some great moments, especially these linebackers in this game. But the late moment was not good, and they put the game in the defense's hands, and the defense couldn't get it done there at the end. But, Ed, this team, you and I sat down and had an exclusive 30, 40-minute interview with Scott Linehan. He seemed to be, unless he's just a good actor, he seemed to be genuinely excited about having a sort of a different cast of characters at wide receiver. They were going to be interchangeable. They could do different things. Ed, this is I made that joke in that interview we did with Brian Gain, the Houston Texans general manager, and when he talked about we wanted to make this a quarterback-friendly wide receiver group. Ed, I think we had further evidence tonight of this group being quarterback-unfriendly for Dak Prescott.
Look, I think here's the reality that the Cowboys are facing right now. In this game tonight, the team with one receiver defeated the team with none. DeAndre Hopkins finished the game with 9 catches for 151 yards. That's surpassed by 71 yards the total number of yards gained by the Cowboys wide receivers as a group. In fact, the 49-yard catch and run that Hopkins made in overtime that set up the game-winning field goal, that was more yards on that one play than any Dallas wide receiver compiled during the entire 5-quarter game. Cowboys receivers, 6 catches, 80 yards compared to DeAndre Hopkins, 9 for 151. It's a team that really has no offense. In this one game, their only touchdown was a result of the Jordan Lewis fumble recovery. They had to go 5 plays and 16 yards for their only touchdown, and that was a Dak Prescott throw to Allen Hurns. Their field goal drives covered 45, 37, and 66 yards. This is an offense that did absolutely nothing to help win this game. And when they had the opportunity in overtime, they had the ball first. If they can go down and score a touchdown, game's over. They couldn't get that done. Jason Garrett then hesitated, put the game on his defense, and they failed him as well. And now the Cowboys are 2-3. And as I said earlier, they're helpless on the road. Can't score at all. 37 points in 13 quarters.
Yeah, it is a helpless situation. And Ed, with a head coach with an offensive background, and with Linehan on that side of the ball, you have to see, and we'll get into what Jalen Smith, you drafted Van Der Esch, you have some players that at least can make some plays, although Byron Jones got a little exposed for the first time this season, but you have the makings of a really excellent defense with Lawrence and some of the pass rushers they have. I have to think, and I want to stay right here with Garrett on this, I have to think that when you start thinking about who your next head coach is, you've got to lean to what is the strength of your team. They did it with Wade Phillips, and they said, okay, we're going to go with a defensive head coach. Obviously, Parcells had a huge background with defense. I have to think that as they sit here right now and see this just inept offense, that we're going to hear a lot. We're going to hear about after this season's done. It's 2-3 right now. I don't think they're going to rally and have a great season, although this is not a very good division. I think two things.
There's only 5 teams in the NFC that have winning records.
Well, and quite honestly, the Giants are horrific. They fell to 1-4 today, even though they were in that game and had a chance. But Ed, I think that we're going to look back. I thought you made some good points up front about Jason playing not to lose. When the game was on the line, hanging in the balance, we saw who he is. And he's had his moments here, but right now, and again, we need to have a discussion about who in the world decided. I mean, that's got to go on Steven, Jerry, McClay. I mean, who convinced these guys that they could go with this group of 7 wide receivers? And oh, by the way, the guys that, Terrence Williams is now in the IR. We don't know if we'll see him again this season. There's no help walking through the door. And this is a pretty sad bunch that they put together, and they sold them on the fact that they were going to be better route runners. Dez wasn't going to be here. They finally had guys that could run routes. I mean, are we seeing any evidence of that?
Well, I would argue that Deshaun Watson was playing into the tougher defense in this particular game, and he completed 33 passes for 375 yards. With a touchdown and an interception, and Dak Prescott was throwing at the lesser of the 2 defenses, completed only 18 passes for 208 yards and 2 touchdowns, or 2 interceptions. He now has 4 interceptions on the season, and in all 4 cases, the ball caromed off the hands of his intended receiver and created a turnover instead of a play. This is the 8th time in Prescott's career that he's had 2 interceptions or more in a game, and the Cowboys are 1-7 when he has 2 or more interceptions. So he's a guy who now is put in a position where they play a game not to make mistakes, and they have very few explosive plays with their outside group. I actually thought Scott Linehan did some pretty creative things at different moments in the game. He had some misdirection stuff with Tavon Austin and Ezekiel Elliott involved in the same play where neither of them got the ball that were very effective. But they just aren't able to execute one base play after another against a pretty strong defensive front like the Texans. And maybe it's time to question the philosophy of the way this team's been put together. Maybe what I thought you could do when they achieved 2 years ago, which was build your offense around a running back when all the rules favor the passing game and everybody's building with their quarterback as the focus of their offense. The Cowboys did something different and tried to go back to their glory days and build it around the running back with Ezekiel Elliott as a 4th pick and a great offensive line and play great defense, and that's enough. And maybe in today's game that just doesn't work anymore. Yeah,
they may have been passed by. Ed, this is one of those games that there might have been some people out there. I hope they weren't out there betting on the Cowboys. But, Ed, this is something I've been kind of hinting at, and I'm excited about this. When you talk about betting in this world, the folks at MyBookie is a name that comes up a lot, and they're incredibly reputable, been in business for years, have great reviews online, and their mobile site easy to use. And one of the important things, when you use MyBookie, you win, they pay. They have in-game live betting, the most rewarding player perks in the business. And for you fantasy guys, Ed, you've been in fantasy before, you can even bet the over-under on how many fantasy points a player will score each game. I think if Hopkins ever lines up against the Cowboys again, you want to bet the over on his fantasy points. Here's how you do it. Join now, and MyBookie will match your deposit dollar for dollar. Use the promo code Doomsday to activate the offer. Visit MyBookie online today. That's MyBookie. And don't forget to use the promo code Doomsday, DOOMSDAY, when creating your account to claim up to $1,000 in free play. You win, you get paid. All right, Ed, say welcome.
Do we know what their odds are yet on Jason Garrett finishing the season as the Cowboys head coach? Has that been established?
That'll be. I think right now it's 2-1 odds that he's fired. But I'll check my bookie later tonight.
I look forward to that.
Yeah. But
I look forward to it.
Yes, we want to welcome my bookie into the Doomsday family. Now, Ed, before I jump over on the defensive side of the ball, and we got to get to Stretch here in a minute, obviously. Anything else on the offensive side you want to address?
Well, I would just say that I thought the Cowboys had a real advantage going into this game offensively in that they were playing against the same scheme 2 weeks in a row. They played the Lions last week, and Matt Patricia is the head coach there. And he, like Romeo Crennel, the defensive coordinator of the Texans, both coached defense under Bill Belichick in New England. And so I thought the Cowboys would have a much better sense of how to attack the scheme, if not maybe the personnel, because I believe they've played the Texans fewer times than any other opponent in the entire league. And so they may not be very familiar with a lot of their personnel and how to exploit them, but they would know how to play against the scheme because they were going to play, as it turned out, 5 additional quarters against the scheme they just played against for 4 quarters a week before.
Yeah, that is interesting to think of. What I kept thinking of was thinking back to sometimes this year how running some of that. I like what you said about some of the schemes, some of those plays that were used when Tavon Austin was used as a decoy. For whatever reason, the Texans seemed to be biting on that like crazy, and so that was nice to see. I do think some of those zone read concepts that have worked so well for Dak, I'd like to see more of that. I mean, he had some good runs when he just sort of had to get out there and scramble. And some of those times he created some of those things on his own. That was an unbelievable play that he made downfield to Tavon Austin. But what I'm talking about is some of those design runs or design an actual zone read where he gets to make that call. I felt like early in the season that some of those things worked, especially with very aggressive defenses. And Ed, I have to wonder too if Zeke was totally himself in this game. He had a 14-yard run early, had a couple of decent back-to-back plays. He
lost one run to a Connor Williams holding.
That is true. That was negated. That was, however, was that 9 or 10 yards? That was a pretty good gain, 12 yards maybe. I have to wonder if he's just been beat to a pulp. Kind of how we were looking at Deshaun Watson in that game, and they had the stethoscope out looking at him. I kind of had a feeling that Zeke was really banged up at some point in that game.
I would say that one of the most favorable impressions I had of anybody on the Cowboys offensive group was that, man, Ezekiel Elliott really gives you all he's got on every single time he touches the ball. There's no give up in that guy. He's fearless the way he attacks the defense. No matter how many times he gets stymied, he goes right back into the hole again with all he has. Great ferocity. I think he did everything individually he could have done to win that game. Again, I, like you, would like to see, more of planned, runs or RPOs with Dak and Zeke, because I think they do it very effectively. And I would also like to see Elliott use a little bit more in the screen game than really in just a check down type of role that I think he had once again tonight, even though he may have caught 7 balls. He had the one screenplay that was very well executed again. They never came back to it, and he did have some check down catches, but that was really about it. I think he can be a much bigger factor in the passing game.
Yeah, I think he was running like a wild man down the field on that one play to Tavon, the scramble play. And at some point, I think he thought, oh, wait, is this to me? But Tavon was able to make that catch. All right.
We should also note a milestone moment for Dak Prescott, the beleaguered quarterback of the Cowboys, through his 50th career touchdown pass in this game in his 37th start. Only the beloved Tony Romo reached the 50 touchdown mark faster than Prescott in terms of games because he did it 24. But we should probably note that Romo also had the luxury of spending 3 years on the bench, observing that Prescott didn't have that opportunity. But congratulations to Dak Prescott on a meaningless accomplishment tonight.
There it is. Okay, and we'll send him something over for that. It is time, Ed. We wait for it. He's a very angry man as he's just finished his TV work tonight, and he's going to grade the Cowboys. I have already been tipped off. There is a lot of anger toward these wide receivers. Let's do it. It's time for Stretch Marks with Glenn Stretch Smith, Cowboys' former scout and coach. But first, let me tell you about Hodges Capital, and you guys do an incredible job. They've been great partners to the Doomsday podcast, and they started out with equity funds and been unbelievable for the past, 25, 30 years, and it was called the Hodges Fund. It's now Hodges Capital, and they do an amazing job, and I'm talking high wealth folks. I'm talking folks that just want to get their retirement right, and one of the great things you see, Craig Hodges, he'll pop up on CNBC, and he's always interviewed by all the big dogs when they're looking, hey, where should I put my money? And that's one of the great things is what they've been able to accomplish over the years, and Don Hodges helped get that thing started with Craig. And just great to have some Baylor guys with us, and the Hodges Capital as they continue to help people increase their wealth, people that are semi-retired like Ed Werder. But no, Ed's going to come right back out of retirement as soon as his prison sentence is over. But the Hodges Capital has been great to us, and we recommend that you get a hold of them. And they've got one of the most gorgeous offices I've ever seen. So I go see them over there on Maple and Hodges Capital. Great to have them. And it is time for something we like to call Stretch Marks. It is Glenn Stretch Smith, and Stretch is moments away after doing some Channel 8, some of his TV work, and we're just within an hour of the aftermath of this Cowboys loss. They lose it in overtime to the Houston Texans, lose that thing 19-16, and they fall to 2-3 on the season. Of course, the Stretch, let's start, and obviously a lot of talk's going to be Cowboys sitting there at the Texans' 41-yard line. They have a 4th and 1. There's about 5 minutes, 45 seconds left in the overtime, and they elect to punt. What was your feeling in the moment? And now that you've had a couple of minutes to think about it, where are you on this?
Well, I think what you're forgetting to talk about, and just let me jog your memory a little bit, was just 3 plays before that, Zeke has to come out of the game because he kind of tweaked his ankle. He catches a ball in the flat, gets up, and they get into a third very manageable 2. He picks it up, but when he picks it up, he tweaks his ankle, had to come out of the game. So when he had to come out of the game, I think it really made Jason Hay kind of rethink where they are now. Keep in mind, the Texans were stunting and stemming guys around all that long, so they were getting you into some minus plays. I'm talking about minus plays because they were moving Clowney around up and down the line of scrimmage and getting and shooting gaps. They were not afraid of anything that you could even possibly do to them on the outside, so they outnumbered you all night. They were not going to let Zeke beat them, and so I just think that your chances in that football game right there, your defense is playing good. They were getting some stops. They had taken Watson, had gone into the tent to get evaluated. I think they were questioning probably where he was from a health perspective. And I just think your chances when you get in those situations and you're playing really good defensively, you punt the football and you go let your defense play, because quite frankly, the defense was going to have to win the football game for you, and they almost did.
Ed, what were your thoughts there?
Well, it's an interesting scenario because we know that last week the Texans won in overtime after Colts head coach Frank Reich chose to go for it. He was aggressive, and he was 20 yards closer to his own goal line than the Cowboys were in this particular situation. He was on about his own 42 and hadn't crossed midfield yet, had a longer distance to go. I believe it was 4th and 6. And Frank Reich's been criticized all week for his ambition and going for the win. I think what Jason Garrett was doing at that point was playing not to lose the game. He knows if they don't get it, then the Texans in all likelihood are going to, move the ball 25 or 30 yards, kick a field goal, and win the game. As it was, he pinned them down on their own 10. DeAndre Hopkins, as he did most of the night, made the big play, got him in field goal position, and they won the game. I think a fan base that believes Jason Garrett has already been the head coach in Dallas for far too long is going to use this decision as a further example of what they perceive to be his incompetence, and will use this to try to motivate the owner to fire him.
I think you're you're dead on about all of that, and no matter who was banged up. I mean, earlier in the game on 4th and 1, they had tried with they had done the quarterback sneak with Dak, and I barely got it. So I know there's different ways to look at this, but the fact that they punted and then lost this game, this is further damage to Jason and everything. Let's start hitting some of the offensive, and we got Stretch, who can be a harsh grader at times. I think the mood he's in right now, I think he's going to be tough on this offense. Let's start there. Stretch, let's start with I know what you're kind of ready to talk about, what you're burning up about. This group of wide receivers, what did you have on them this evening?
Well, I like how you want to go out. You want to shoot the fireworks, the grand finale right up front. But this group of receivers has not played well all year long, and I'm talking about they do not get separation. They are not physical at the line of scrimmage. They cannot win deep. They do not win in a lot of one-on-one situations. Tonight, Houston was daring them to throw the football, absolutely daring them to throw the football, and they don't have anybody that can win. Doesn't mean that I don't like Cole Beasley in some underneath situations, but the rest of this crew are just guys. And so, you want to get me wound up, you got it. I mean, the thought of it's a little bit difficult here because I really try to stay in the middle of the road when I talk about the Cowboys. I don't want people saying, Stretch is sour grapes because they fired him. And you know what? Maybe I'm fired for a reason and doing Channel 8 for a reason. But when I look at this group of receivers, they are not very good. It doesn't look they're very well coached. Gallup does not come back to drive back to that curl route. You've got a quarterback who is getting the crap knocked out of him. You've got to go make a play in those situations. Not only am I giving the receivers an F, I'm giving the receiver coach an F also.
There it is. And Sanjay Lau is assigned an F by Stretch, an F for the wide receivers.
I thought Stretch would be giving an F to anybody associated with the decision to keep this group of receivers and release Des Bryant.
Well, and I'm going to give that group an F too. Now that you got me fired up, all right, Ed. Who else you want to give a damn F to over there? We can get somebody answering the phone tomorrow and even thinking about wide receivers. But I really did not think this team would miss Dez. I really thought that when you saw the decline of Dez's play, I'm saying that because I don't know that he has ever come back from that. When he had that Jones fracture in his foot, he never really showed me the Dez that I saw the first 2 years. But right now, Dez Bryant, if you or your agent are listening, would you get on the phone first thing tomorrow morning with Will McClay and see if they'll bring you in, brother, because you're better than what they got right now.
Yeah, I agree. And the Cowboys at this point seem to have too much pride to even think about that. But we'll continue to hear Jerry answer the question. And by the way, guys, I would just add, this Texans secondary has been decimated with injuries. Kayvon Webster goes out early in this one. Sharice Wright was in there. He's a veteran they got a rookie safety, third-round pick, Justin Reed, that's playing.
They lost Kevin Johnson, their best corner,
Correct.
week one.
Yeah, and the other starting quarterback, Colvin, just went out and he may be out for a good while. And then Jonathan Joseph, a veteran, has been getting burned all year. And this is the group that the Cowboys, and quite honestly, the only time they made that huge chunk play, well, they had two big chunk plays. The tight end got loose early in the game. Two tight ends got loose. You had Rico Gathers. That was a very exciting time of the game for me. And then you had Swaim get loose, and then you had a desperation throw where the quarterback makes an unbelievable throw down the field to Tavon Austin. Other than that, this group doesn't seem to step up. And to Stretch's point, when Deontay Thompson really needed to make a play for the quarterback, he didn't get it done in that game. So, Stretch, let's move right over to the offensive line in this game. I know we're just recording this just right after the game, but your sort of initial thoughts on how this O-line played.
Well, again, when Houston and Romeo Crennel devised a pretty, I thought, well-devised game plan, defensive schematically wise, what they were doing. They were moving and stunning Clowney. They were moving their guys around. They were going to blitz. They were not going to let Zeke Elliott beat them. So, to try to grade them fairly, this is a tough grade. And let's just say it was a very tough test. But right now, at best, I can give that group a D. The quarterback was under pressure all night. You would think, even though that line is stemming and stunting around, you've got to hit. You've got to find some creases and make them stop doing that. And the way you make them stop doing that is you continue to hammer the football at them. But, it was like tonight, if Scott Lanahan didn't design it exactly right, they weren't able to move the football. And that flows to the offensive line, because what should be the strength of this football team is a physical group. And they flash at times and do some great things. I mean, I look at Tyron outside and I see him really handle. I mean, there were times Clowney was almost in a what you would call a 9 technique. I mean, very wide outside of the offensive tackle, and he still was able to step out there and get his hands on him. Now, there was a couple of times that Clowney stepped inside and beat him too, and that happens. But I thought Tyron did a great job. I thought Zach Martin did a great job. But overall, as a group, they did not play well together, and I got to give them a D.
All right, and let's look at let's go ahead and look at the quarterback, Dak Prescott, who continues to have some accuracy issues and took some punishment, ran the ball a little bit, but what did you have on him?
Well, I think he plays well enough to win. I mean, when you see him, they're not confident in throwing the football outside the numbers. However, in the one critical situation, he throws the ball to Tavon Austin outside on a comeback route. Tavon Austin can't hold the ball through the catch. Now, he had 2 interceptions. Both of them were tipped by his receivers. And I understand when you're running that big route inside, sometimes it can be at 12, sometimes it can be at 14. But you got to have receivers to go make plays for you. I don't put that directly on the quarterback. I think this quarterback is tough. I think he ran. They had some designed quarterback draws tonight. He ran the football up in there tough. I think he runs the clock. He understands this offense. Made a great throw on the touchdown to Hearns. So, I've got to give him a B. It's very hard for me to ding him accuracy-wise when he's got receivers that he doesn't know where they're going to be, nor does he know when they're going to be there.
Well, and that was the whole justification for making the changes that they did at the wide receiver position, which was, Stephen Jones said Dak Prescott's like Troy Aikman from the standpoint of, he wants receivers who are, going to run precise routes. You're going to be where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there. And you're saying we're not seeing that.
And I think that's exactly right. We are not seeing that. And so I'll go back to you. And if you're trying to throw a little gas on the fire, you can do it. But whoever brought these receivers in here, whoever stood up and wanted this group, they got to be held accountable. And at some point, I think, you've got to, this could really, I do think that this could be Jason's undoing, the fact that they've kept a group of receivers that, is a bunch of overachieving guys. I mean, Jason's got a bunch of guys that are just like him playing wide receiver. I mean, they're overachievers.
All right, and Stretch finally on the offense, running back Zeke was obviously, as you said, was kind of banged up late in that game. Actually, early in the game, he had a little bit of a struggle. We knew last week he was kind of fighting several nagging injuries, including an ankle. What did you see out of him?
Well, he ran the ball hard. I thought he did a really nice job in protection a couple times. I mean, that's where he's really good. He catches the football. You've got to have some place to run the football. And tonight they didn't do a great job up front. Hard for me to ding him on that. I'm going to go with giving him a B. I tell you, I was impressed though with the tight ends. I mean, I know you've been on, you've been on gathers, and I like that Lanahan put the 3 tight end package in. They were successful doing some things. They designed a corner route to gathers that he was able to get open. Jarwin made a play. Swain made a play. So, tight ends wise, I'm gonna group them in there with the running backs and give them a B. They played good enough tonight to have a winning grade.
Certainly seemed like it, and to your point, Swain went down there and plucked one off the ground, which was an excellent catch by him, and those are the kind of plays that a guy like Dak needs when his passes aren't always in perfect placement. Now let's go over to the defensive side of the ball, and listen, Stretch, I got to give you credit. You have been slow to embrace this whole Byron Jones era at cornerback, and though Pro Football Focus and others have ranked him very high, and sometimes they don't throw at him. Tonight, Deshaun Watson didn't have any problem throwing at him, and DeAndre Hopkins ended up having a well of a ball game and ends up with over 150 yards receiving, much of that directed at Byron Jones.
Yeah, he I think he'll grow from that, and I've been the reason I'm hard on Byron Jones is. He hadn't gotten his hand on the football. He doesn't get his hands on the football a lot. And I thought he did some okay things tonight. He obviously got beat. He got exposed by a really good receiver. Their timing was really good. They were some of the things that Bill O'Brien did as far as cutting a split down and being able to throw some of those out cuts and do some things was well timed. Obviously, Deshaun Watson likes throwing that ball to him. There's a great feel there. They were able to protect a little bit up front, so they ran some deep crosses to him, and it's hard for a corner to cover that long. But I thought that Xavier Woods played well tonight. I thought you saw some things out of the secondary that give you some. I'm going to say arrow up, going to give you some enthusiasm with what I saw. I saw Brown make a few plays. I saw Wouzier do some good things in coverage. I saw Heath make a play or two. So
George Lewis created a turnover.
Yeah, and great, good point. And I just think that I wasn't ready to jump on the bandwagon of saying, oh my gosh, we're back to having us a shutdown corner here in Dallas with Byron Jones. But I can't, that group played well enough tonight as a group. Again, as a group, they had a winning grade and a B there. The linebackers, a great job, guys. I mean, those linebackers, I was critical of the Vander Esch pick, and I guess I was because I knew what they had at receiver and the thought of Calvin Ridley sitting there and you taking him. But, boy, you see him tonight. I mean, he made some plays tonight. Now, he got exposed a little bit in coverage when they ran those out cuts a couple of times, but that's the only place I can ding him. I mean, he can really run, and I saw him run underneath a reverse one time. He can read and recognize. He's obviously a smart kid, so the linebackers got a winning grade as well and a B for both.
Jalen Smith was terrific.
Exactly. He was flying around. I mean, and he's played that way all year. So this group tonight, along with the secondary, played winning football, and you should have got a win out of that. And I'm sure defensively they're thinking the same thing. This group is playing well.
All right, let's look at the defensive line. I noticed 99 Antoine Woods actually made some plays tonight, and he was sort of getting some penetration. Certainly wasn't a huge game for Lawrence, but what did you see from that line? And actually a couple of plays made by Crawford I noticed as well behind the line. What did that overall? What did you think? Because Watson was able to move. I mean, they obviously he got beat up badly, but he was able to kind of hang in there and make the throws he needed to make.
Yeah, pass rush wise, I didn't think that Dallas was on their A game, and I'm saying their ends, Gregory, Lawrence. I mean, they
Taco.
And Taco got a little dinged. I am looking for David Irving to come back into this group. I think they need that rotation. You mentioned the inside guys, Crawford and Woods did a very nice job against the run. I thought the ends did a nice job against the run. Now, Dallas has been able this year, up until this game, to get some pressure, bringing 4 and 5. This game, they were not able to do that, and it gave Watson a little comfort level that he could keep plays alive. Now, he's great with his feet. I mean, you see him. The rush does not bother him. He keeps his eyes down the field, and he is a tough kid. But overall, you got to give the linebackers, the secondary, all of those guys, in my mind, got a B and a winning grade. They should have won the football game with what they did defensively. I love what they did in the red zone. I mean, I love how they play. I'm talking about going back to the corners, how they're playing tight coverage down there. No one, they got that end zone kind of as their 12th man. So this team looks well coached defensively, and I've been hesitant to jump on the Keith Richard bandwagon, but after you saw what they did tonight and really being able to get after Houston now, we could be critical of them on 4th and 1, snapping the ball in the shotgun. I thought, what a wide world of sports is going there, but we don't talk about the other group. We talk about this group. We grade this group with what we saw, and I thought you got a winning effort out of your defensive front, your linebackers, and your secondary tonight. It's a shame they didn't win that football game from a defensive perspective.
What Stretch? Last thing, what did you make of the biggest play of the game on offense for the Texans? The what Hopkins did and making that huge play and all the twisting and turning he was able to do on that play. I know Brown started out on him on that play. Was that just a guy making a superhuman type play, or guys taking bad angles? What did you kind of make of that big play?
I thought that they ran that kind of that reverse look to try to get the safety and Heath out of the middle of the field, and they did. And when they did that, they were able to protect. And any time, again, that you're able to run those deep crossing routes and your protection can hold up and you can get him across there, it's very hard to cover that far down the field. And so, it was a great throw and it's a great play. I'm going to tell you from a coaching perspective, it shouldn't have come down to that, to winning and losing that football game. It really shouldn't. Dallas had other opportunities, and it's unfortunate that play, was so magnified. But when the margin for winning and losing is razor thin like it is, and you don't have receivers making big plays for you, it comes down to you're looking at the defensive backs and saying, damn, why didn't you cover him all the way across the field? And I can make a case that, Hopkins is one of the best receivers in the league right now, and I think they added a test to that as well.
Well, Stretch, we really appreciate it. Always great stuff. Folks, Stretch is on WFAA every Sunday night with Del Hansen. You can watch him there. He has another call-in show the following day, does a lot of fun stuff for Channel 8, and we love having him here. If you heard a little break in the phone, he was getting out there to Parker County. They don't have a lot of cell coverage out there, but Stretch, we really appreciate it. And I know it's been a late night for you, but we will look forward to talking to you next week.
Okay, guys, have a great week. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Stretch. Appreciate you, buddy.
There he goes, Glenn Stretch Smith on Stretch Marks. And there it was, Stretch Marks. And Ed, let's talk a little bit about where we ended it with Glenn Stretch Smith. Always happy to have him on there. Let's talk about the defense. For the most part, there were some solid moments. I think, Ed, the best moments for this defense occurred in the red zone, and I don't know, part of that might have been ineptitude by Bill O'Brien and some of the execution from the play calling from the Texans, but right there before the half, for the Cowboys to be able to stone them down on the 2-yard line. And Jalen Smith, I thought about, Jalen's been a guy that's come on Doomsday with us in the past. It is remarkable. I don't think maybe you were a little more hopeful than I was. I don't think I ever thought he would be back to where he is now. And then to watch him take off from sort of a pretty good ways and against a very, very athletic quarterback and make that play at the end of the half on 4th and goal right there at the 2-yard line. I mean, this is we're now we may have a Pro Bowl type player on our hands that we're watching.
Well, and really to the Cowboys' credit, and obviously, Jerry Jones took a lot of criticism for using a second-round pick on a Jalen Smith, who at the time had, ended his college career with a really significant ACL tear that also involved nerve damage, and nobody really knew whether he would recover or to what degree. Just talking to teams around the NFL at the time, you got a variety of opinions. I think the primary opinion was that at some point Jalen Smith would probably recover and play in the NFL. It was a matter of, well, how long is it going to take before he overcomes the injury and is able to play again? And then at what level? And I don't think most people in the league believe that he would get to the elite level again, that he'd be a dominant starting player in the NFL. And I think that he's well on his way to achieving that right now. And that's a credit to Jerry, because a lot of people, like I said, were very dubious about that decision. Jerry obviously put a lot of trust in the team's Dr. Dan Cooper, who did the surgery. He knew more about Jalen Smith's injury than anybody else did in the league, and the Cowboys took advantage of that. And I think when they took him, the prevailing feeling in the organization was, we think he's going to have a 10-year career. We just don't know when it's going to start. And that certainly looks like something he's going to accomplish with relative ease, assuming he stays healthy from this point forward. And I guess the other thing I would say about the defense was, I mentioned the Cowboys have played, this is only their 5th game against the Texans, the fewest games they've played against any opponent in the NFL. And another advantage that they had defensively was that, their defensive coordinator, at least in title, Rod Marinelli, an assistant at the time, Matt Eberflus, who left the staff in the offseason to become the defensive coordinator of the Indianapolis Colts. Well, the Colts played the Texans last week. And Eberflus and Marinelli, while they were together in Dallas, really devised a plan to contain running quarterbacks like Watson, who ranks 2nd in the NFL in passing efficiency outside the pocket. And what they try to do is get as many great athletes on the field as possible. And so that's why getting Randy Gregory on the field for this game, that's why Jalen Smith and, the rookie Leighton Vander Esch, that's why those guys are so important in a game like this. And I guess the next thing I would do is criticize David Irving for being suspended and missing the first 4 games of the season, and then for whatever personal problems he has that are a higher priority than his commitment to his job and his team, he's not in the game when they made a roster move for him to accommodate him earlier in the week. And Jerry Jones all but swore that Irving was going to play in this game, and you wonder what kind of difference maybe he would have made. They did give up 465 yards on defense, but they surrendered only 19 points. It's all about situational football now in the NFL as it pertains to defense, and the Cowboys dominated the red zone.
They did, and that Irving thing is nuts to me. I mean, this is a place that really, I guess, values work-life balance. If you just have a little personal, again, I say little, I don't know what it is. But, yeah, you're right. You spend this whole week basically, okay, we got this guy back. We're excited about him. Okay, we're going to make some roster moves. Get him back on the roster. We got to cut some guy, or we got to put some guys on IR, and then they can't even get him to the game. Oh, he's got something. And then I like some of these reporters out there. I'm not going to name any names. They're like, basically like, I don't know. If you're going to report something that, hey, he had something that he couldn't avoid, and report it like that, like it could not be helped, well, you better let us know what it is. I mean, I just don't quite understand that. I mean, maybe.
Well, I think the organization owes the public and its fan base an explanation for what exactly it is that is preventing David Irving from being ready to play when he's coming back from a suspension. What is it that's keeping Terrence Williams from participating in practices before he finally gets put on IR? Why is it that Randy Gregory is in Chicago last Thursday instead of on the practice field with his teammates? What's going on? What other team in football has three players like this who are starting caliber players who are not at practice as a matter of the regular course of business? It's really absurd. I can't imagine how upsetting it must be to a lot of guys on that team.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Now let's discuss a couple more aspects of this defense. And Byron Jones has had a really nice season. And now, some of the times tonight he was draped all over Hopkins. I mean, Hopkins and Watson obviously have a great connection. Hopkins put up great numbers with horrible quarterbacks. Now that he has a good one, it's pretty amazing to watch. But, boy, they did not shy away from going to Byron Jones. I would say that 153 yards, whatever it ended up being, at least 100 of it seemed to come right over there at Byron Jones. And so, this might he's had a good season. This might have been a little bit of a wake-up call for him. People have been shying away from him. Deshaun Watson didn't shy away from him at all.
Well, and it was a little perplexing as to why the Cowboys didn't provide, Byron some help, maybe double cover Hopkins a little more than they did. It seemed like instead they chose to, rush extra people at Deshaun Watson and try and handle the problem at that end of the pass, the quarterback end of the pass, rather than at the wide receiver end of the pass. And just didn't work out for them. But overall, I mean, they did create two turnovers. Jordan Lewis and Anthony Brown combined on a turnover that set up a short field. And we've been talking about, all season that this offense doesn't seem capable of creating a lot of explosive plays, scoring from anywhere on the field, nor does it seem capable of, consistently driving the length of the field. That they need a defense that's going to create some short field opportunities. And Jordan Lewis did that with the fumble recovery. And as it turned out, that resulted in the Cowboys' only touchdown of the night. And then Xavier Woods, for all his failure in terms of taking proper angles and being a short tackler in the secondary, did register the Cowboys' first interception of the season, the Cowboys being the last team in the NFL without an interception before that play.
Yeah, and I would have to say that given how the offense had looked, Ed, maybe that last interception, or that one interception, maybe it's like the announcers were saying, maybe stay in bounds there and try to get some more yardage, although it's just hard to have the presence of mind to do that with 10 seconds left. It's probably in your mind you're saying, hey, I need to get out of bounds and give my offense a chance. Before we wrap things up, Ed, I did want to say Jerry Jones, speaking outside the Cowboys locker room in Houston tonight, was asked about DeAndre Hopkins and, what it's like, to see a team that has a receiver like that. And Jerry's response was, I would love to have number one receivers. You have to get those when the opportunities are there. So, obviously they had a chance possibly to get one in a rookie in Ridley. They took Van Der Esch, and that may work out. Van Der Esch appears to be a really good player. The real-time nature of this, I wanted to catch you up on. Dez has already responded to that. From Jerry, and he says, I don't know what Jerry meant by that number one wide receiver, but I'm damn for sure would have kept them chains moving. Okay, that was a few minutes ago from Dez Bryant. So you can.
I think from he's been trolling the Cowboys a lot of the season, and it's fair to him for him to respond to Jerry. I know for a fact that he does not hold Jerry responsible for releasing him. He thinks, that was the decision made by Jason Garrett and Scott Linehan, the offensive coordinator. Beyond that, I believe Dez is about ready, or feels he's about ready, to resume his NFL career, that he's taken care of some social anxiety issues and other problems that he felt were holding him back. that he's in great physical shape. And I think his preference, despite all of this, I think his preference is clearly to play for the Cowboys again. And whether Jerry is willing to reconsider that now, when he pretty much dismissed it as a possibility in conversations he had before the game, remains to be seen. But it is really hard to imagine any of these guys playing not just at the level that Dez achieved when he was at the height of his game, in his first couple of years in the league with Romo, but just what he did the last 2 years. I don't even think they can get back to – I don't think the current group can do what Dez did when he was a descending player. So I don't know what the money is that Dez would be willing to play for. I don't know if there's any amount of money the Cowboys would be willing to swallow their pride and bring him back. I really can't imagine that happening, but I think he's very open to the idea.
Yeah, he's made it very clear, and I just think this is where he feels the most comfortable. And I was looking real quick just to see what Josh Gordon did. He had another touchdown today, 2 catches, 50 yards. Of course, that was the other night, that game that the Patriots were involved in. So, obviously they had a shot to get in on him, and for whatever reason decided not to, and they traded a 5th-round pick. And
I can't sit here and criticize them for David Irving and Terrence Williams and Randy Gregory and then say, oh, you should have got Josh Gordon when you had a chance.
I think you totally can.
56 games in the last 4 years or whatever it's been.
He totally has. But
I can certainly understand their decision to pass on Josh Gordon.
He's shown up for every game for the Patriots. You can.
So far, he showed up for all 2 games that they've had him active.
You can criticize him all you want, and I appreciate it. Good stuff this evening, and I think this is, we had the 1 game reprieve where maybe everybody feels a little bit better about things, but now I think this whole week will be about Jason Garrett. I think the 4th and 1 call is going to get a huge amount of attention, and I just he has shown at times a willingness to take some risk. But generally, he is not a risk taker.
It's not who he is.
No, and
no backup quarterback is generally a gunslinger, right? The backup quarterback's a guy whose job it is to just get us through these next few games. Don't be the reason we lose it while our starter's out. Just give us our season back, to the starting player when he's available again. Don't make the kind of mistakes that send everyone home, as Bill Parcells used to say.
Yeah, you say that, but one of the backups was one of the guys you were talking about taking a huge risk last week, Frank Reich, and I feel like Doug Peterson's somewhat of a risk taker. Not to try to –
Good point.
Well, Ed, it was a
I want to say one more thing about this game, if I could.
Please do.
I thought it was a unique game from the standpoint of how physical it was from the perspective of the 2 quarterbacks. I think Dak Prescott took a lot of punishment in this game, and I think a lot of punishment was inflicted on Deshaun Watson. He went to the medical tent several times. It appears he has some kind of a rib injury, and whether that affects him going forward remains to be determined. He obviously played through it in this game and won an important game for the Texans. But I don't recall. I don't think this was one of those games where there were a lot, maybe not any, roughing the passer calls, despite how physical a game it was at the quarterback position. I think that's kind of what maybe Chris Collinsworth was alluding to about his fascination and how attractive a game this was because the officials really let a lot of stuff go, and it was kind of an old style physical football game.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. But even when J.J. Watt went in there and hit Dak a little after he had released the ball, did you notice he sort of was able to contort his body a little bit and not land directly on top of him?
That should have been roughing the passer just because he hit him after the ball was out.
Maybe so. I mean, I'm still not used to that because those guys are so. But maybe so. I think it's hard to pull off. But I think the reason it wasn't, if he had just stayed on top of him, it would have been called. There was a call today, Ed. You'll this will come to mind with you. There was a call today where somebody literally went in and hit somebody around the waist. As they.
Oh, yeah.
I think, did they still have the ball? I don't think the ball had come out yet.
It was in the Eagles game, wasn't it? Hit him around the waist and dropped down to his ankles. They called him for roughing the passer.
Just kind of slid down. Yeah, and he didn't try to go low. He went right in at the waist, and it's really impossible. And for some reason, it's like they're the bane of Aikman's existence right now. They all seem to happen in his game, like the big ones, and that was another one. And I think he's really he's really disgusted with it. But he made the point today. He was like, I don't like this, but if they had been, I would have played longer. It would have extended my career had I been able to play with these rules.
We should probably stop talking so that Frito can get this out there to the good people who are anxiously awaiting its availability.
Well, if you want to stop talking, you can. I'm gonna go on for
all
a
right,
little
well,
while.
You go ahead.
Yeah. But hey, everybody, thanks for being a part of this. This will join us on all your different ways that you experience podcasts, and check out our Facebook page. The Doomsday Podcast Facebook page has become a place, and then Frito's doing an incredible job with our website. Frito is at the doomsdaypodcast.com. And then other areas you can reach us. We do have a YouTube channel. How do they find that? Just Doomsday Podcast YouTube channel. So we're really kind of everywhere you could possibly look. Ed, good. Have a great evening, and can't wait to get you back in Dallas for one of these episodes.
I'll be in the studio next week with you, buddy.
Awesome. There he goes, Ed Werder. I am Matt Mosley from Frito Nation Productions in far north Dallas. It is Matt Mosley. Good night, everybody.
Just in and so good. Thousands of spring deals at your Nordstrom Rack store. Save big today on new arrivals from Kate Spade New York, Nike, Sam Edelman, Free People, and Madewell, starting at only $30. Great brands and great prices on dresses, denim, sandals, designer bags, and more. So rack your look and get first dibs on spring styles you want now from just $30 at your Nordstrom Rack store. What will you find?
At Amica Insurance, we know it's more than a life policy. It's about the promise and the responsibility that comes with being a new parent. Being there day and night. And building a plan for tomorrow, today. For the ones you'll always look out for, trust Amica Life Insurance. Amica. Empathy is our best policy.